Okay, let's dive in. We're sitting with a really rich source of information here, a detailed report all about Grand Canyon National Park.
Mm-hmm.
You asked us to take a deep dive, and our mission today is basically to cut through everything, pull out the really key insights, the surprising facts, the important takeaways from this material.
Yeah.
Think of it as like your shortcut to really getting a handle on this incredible place.
That's a great way to put it. Because the Grand Canyon, it's so much more than just, well, a giant hole in the ground.
Yeah.
Even though that's profound in itself.
Right.
It's got these incredible layers, not just geology, but history, ecology, the whole human story there.
So we're going to unpack all that, how it formed, the human connection over millennia.
Exactly. How you can experience it today, its scale, and importantly, the work being done to protect it. It's a lot.
Okay. And, well, you have to start with that sense of scale. It's the first thing that hits you, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The source calls it a profound testament to Earth's artistry. And you feel that instantly when you stand there.
You really do. And Grand Canyon National Park, that's the entity responsible for stewarding that artistry. Its core purpose, laid out right here, is preserving all these resources, natural, cultural, for people to enjoy, learn from, be inspired by.
And keeping them unimpaired for the future. That sounds like a huge job.
It's massive, and the word massive definitely applies to the place itself. The numbers give you a sense of it. We're talking over 1.2 million acres.
Wow.
That's more than 1,900 square miles. And a huge chunk of that is still wild backcountry, something like 560 miles of unpaved trails.
So really vast.
And the canyon itself, it snakes along for 278 miles following the Colorado River.
Okay.
But it's not, uniform. The width changes dramatically. It can be as narrow as 600 feet in Marble Canyon.
That's tight.
And then spread out to 18 miles across at its widest. The average is around 10 miles.
And that difference in width must change everything. The view, the environment down there.
Totally. It creates different viewpoints, different microclimates even, and then there's the depth.
Right, how deep are we talking?
On average, about a mile straight down to the river.
A mile.
At its deepest point, it plunges 6,000 vertical feet. That depth is why you get these completely different climate zones, the cool, high rims versus the, well, often scorching inner canyon floor.
And the rims themselves are high up to begin with.
Oh, yeah. High altitude. The south rim averages around 7,000 feet. The north rim is even higher, over 8,000 feet.
Ah, so that explains the difference in feel, the shorter season on the north rim.
Exactly. That extra 1,000 feet means cooler temperatures, more snow, hence the shorter operating season. Altitude is definitely something you need to factor in when you visit.
And it's a place that draws millions. The source mentions nearly 5 million visitors in 2024.
Yeah, huge numbers.
That tells you something about its global appeal, right?
Yeah.
But also, wow, the management challenge.
That's a central issue, accommodating that many people while protecting such a, well, fragile and powerful environment. It impacts everything: trails, transport, infrastructure.
Okay. So underpinning all of this, literally, is the geology, the
Sure.
rock. This isn't just scenery. The source calls it a geological masterclass. 2 billion years of Earth's history just laid bare.
It really is. It's like the ultimate geology classroom. You can see stratigraphy, the study of rock layers, and the law of superposition.
Oldest on the bottom, youngest on top.
Basically, yeah, you see it so dramatically there, unless something really major happened to flip things around, which isn't the case for the main layers.
So let's start at the very bottom, way down in the inner gorge. What's down there?
That's where you find the oldest stuff, the Vishnu basement rocks. We're talking ancient foundation, 1.7 to 1.8 billion years old.
Billion, wow.
Yeah. It's this dark, intensely changed metamorphic rock called Vishnu schist, and it's shot through with lighter-colored igneous rock, the Zoroaster granite.
So really mashed up and cooked deep underground.
Exactly. It tells a story of, like, volcanic islands crashing together, incredible heat, pressure. John Wesley Powell, he called that section the Granite Gorge. Apt name.
Okay, so that's the really deep, ancient stuff. What comes next, sitting on top of that? I read about the Grand Canyon Supergroup.
Right. In some areas above those basement rocks, you find the Grand Canyon Supergroup, still Precambrian, so very old, maybe 1.2 billion to 740 million years ago. Mostly sedimentary rocks, like old sandstones and mudstones.
Okay.
But here's the key thing you notice if you see them. They're tilted. They aren't flat like the layers way above.
Tilted, why?
That tilting is the evidence. It shows there were huge tectonic forces at work after the supergroup formed, but before all those flat layers higher up were laid down.
Oh, so they formed flat, got tilted, then eroded down again.
Precisely. And the supergroup is also interesting because it holds some of the earliest evidence of life found in the canyon, fossilized stromatolites.
Stromatolites.
Yeah.
Those are built by bacteria.
Yeah, ancient cyanobacteria colonies building these layered mounds in shallow water. Pretty amazing.
So you've got the basement, then these tilted ancient layers, and then everything changes to those big horizontal colorful stacks we see.
Exactly. That's the next huge chapter, the Paleozoic strata. Laid down roughly 550 million to 230 million years ago. These form the bulk of the canyon walls you see, stacked up nice and neat, horizontally.
And these are mostly
Sedimentary rocks, again, sandstones, limestones, shales. But the really cool thing is they are packed with marine fossils.
okay, that's one of those facts that just seems wild. Marine fossils, a mile up on the edge of a desert canyon.
It's stunning proof, isn't it? Finding fossils of things like brachiopods, trilobites, corals, crinoids, sea creatures embedded in these rocks tells us definitively that this whole region spent huge stretches of the Paleozoic era under shallow seas.
Wow.
Each layer tells a part of that story. The Tapeats sandstone at the bottom, that's the sea advancing over the land.
Okay.
The bright Angel shale above it, deeper water, you find trilobite tracks in there. The Mayav limestone suggests even deeper marine conditions.
And what about that really obvious red cliff band you see?
The Redwall limestone. It's a major cliff former, very prominent, also full of marine fossils. But the red color, that's actually a stain.
A stain.
Yeah, from iron oxides washing down from the layers above it, mainly the Supai group and Hermit shale. The Redwall itself isn't naturally bright red.
Huh. Interesting. So above the red wall.
You get the Supai group, which shows a shift away from purely marine, more like rivers, floodplains, near-shore environments. Then the Hermit shale, which is softer, reddish, and has fossils of ancient plants and even some reptile tracks.
Okay, and then we get to maybe the most famous layer visually, the light-colored one.
The Coconino sandstone, yes, distinctive light color. And it shows these huge, sweeping diagonal lines within it, cross-bedding.
Right.
Those aren't just patterns. They are the fossilized remains of massive ancient sand dunes. Clear evidence that this place was a vast desert hundreds of millions of years ago.
So you go from ancient ocean floor to ancient desert, all stacked up. That's kind of mind-blowing.
It absolutely is. Above the Coconino, you have the Toroweap Formation, indicating fluctuating shorelines again, back and forth. And then finally, capping both rims, is the Kaibab limestone.
That's the rock you're standing on at the main viewpoints.
Often, yes, at places like Mather Point or Yavapai Point on the south rim or Bright Angel Point on the north. And guess what? It's packed with marine fossils to sponges, brachiopods, corals.
So the very top layer, a mile above the river, was once seabed.
Yep. A powerful reminder of the immense changes this landscape has undergone.
Now, you mentioned dramatic events earlier. There's this famous feature where a huge chunk of time is just missing from the rock record. The Great Unconformity.
Ah, yes. This is one of the most profound geological stories the canyon tells. An unconformity, basically, is a gap in the rock record. It represents time when either no rock was being deposited or existing rock was being eroded away.
Yeah.
And the Great Unconformity in the Grand Canyon is maybe the most spectacular example on Earth. It's a boundary you can literally see between those ancient crystalline Vishnu basement rocks, or the tilted supergroup,
Right?
and the much younger horizontal Tapeats sandstone sitting directly on top of them.
And how much time is missing there? That's the crazy part, right?
It's staggering. Depending on where you are in the canyon, the gap represents anywhere from about 250 million years up to over 1 billion years of lost geological history.
1 billion years. Just gone.
Wiped from the local record. It's a chasm of time longer than the entire Phanerozoic eon, the time since complex visible life really took off.
And I read it lines up roughly with the end of the Precambrian and the start of the Cambrian period, when life suddenly got more complex.
Exactly. It's a major dividing line. Below it, rocks are largely devoid of complex fossils. Above it, in the Tapeats and higher, you see the sudden burst of diversity associated with the Cambrian explosion.
Why is it missing? Do we know?
Well, there are theories. Some link it to huge global events, maybe erosion during snowball Earth periods when the planet was largely frozen over. Others think it might be more of a regional thing happening at different times in different places.
But the Grand Canyon version is special.
It's special because it's so incredibly well exposed and accessible. You can hike down trails like the South Kaibab or Grand View and physically touch that surface, Place your hand on a boundary representing maybe 1 billion years of missing time. It's a very tangible connection to deep time.
Okay, so we have these incredibly ancient rocks formed over billions of years, stacked up with this massive time gap.
Mm-hmm.
But the canyon itself, the actual giant chasm carved into those rocks that's much younger.
Yes, that's the crucial second part of the story. The rocks are ancient, but the canyon is geologically young. It wasn't formed with the rocks, it was carved into them relatively recently.
By the Colorado River.
By the Colorado River, yes. But the river could only do that after a critical precursor event, the broad regional uplift of the entire Colorado Plateau.
The whole area got lifted up.
Yeah, starting maybe 70 million years ago, continuing possibly until 30 million years ago, this uplift raised the whole region thousands of feet higher than it used to be.
And that was essential.
Absolutely essential. It gave the ancestral Colorado River the steep gradient, the downward slope. It needed to gain erosive power and start cutting down so deeply and, relatively speaking, so quickly.
So how recent are we talking for the actual carving of the canyon?
The current best estimates suggest the Colorado River established its present course through the canyon area only about 5 to 6 million years ago.
Only 5 or 6 million. Compared to rocks that are billions of years old. That's surprisingly young.
It is. There's various lines of evidence, volcanic rocks that flowed into and dammed early versions of the canyon, sediments deposited downstream that can be dated, the timing of the opening of the Gulf of California, which gave the river a lower base level to cut down to.
Yeah.
It all points to this relatively recent carving phase.
So the river acted like a giant saw.
That's a good analogy. The river, carrying abrasive sand, gravel, and boulders, acted like a saw, cutting primarily downward. At the same time, other forces weathering from rain and ice, erosion by tributary streams, rockfalls due to gravity worked to widen the canyon, carving out the side canyons, the buttes, the temples we see today.
And is this process still happening?
It is, yes. Erosion continues. But the process has been significantly altered by human intervention, primarily the Glen Canyon Dam upstream.
Right. Built in the 1960s. How did that change things?
Well, the dam trapped almost all the sediment that the river used to carry. So the water released downstream is clear, sometimes called hungry water, which erodes differently. It also regulates the flow, no more massive natural spring floods that used to scour the channel and rebuild beaches. And the water released is typically much colder, coming from the bottom of Lake Powell.
And that affects the ecosystem.
Hugely. It impacts everything from sandbar stability to riverside vegetation and, crucially, the survival of native fish adapted to the old, warmer, sediment-rich river.
So it's this incredible contrast. Billions of years of slow rock formation and transformation versus this relatively rapid dynamic carving by the river in just the last few million years, kicked off by that big uplift.
Exactly. The river exposed the layers, it didn't create them. And geology is still active there. Ongoing erosion, occasional rockfalls, subtle tectonic movements, even some relatively recent volcanic activity in the western part of the park.
Fascinating. Okay, so beyond the rock and the river, there's this whole other dimension, the human story. And the source says that's incredibly layered and deep, too.
It absolutely is. People have been connected to this landscape for at least 13,000 years. This wasn't an empty wilderness waiting to be discovered. It's been a homeland, a sacred place, a place of challenge and adaptation for millennia.
13,000 years. Who are the earliest people we know about?
The earliest evidence points to Paleo-Indians, around 13,000 to maybe 9,000 years ago. They were likely nomadic hunters, probably following Ice Age megafauna mammoths, giant sloths. We find their characteristic stone tools like Clovis and Folsom Points. The climate was cooler and wetter then.
And the arid climate helped preserve evidence.
Yes, the dryness, especially in caves and rock shelters, has been fantastic for preserving organic artifacts that would normally decay.
Okay, so after the Paleo-Indians.
Then you have the archaic peoples, roughly 9,000 to 3,000 years ago. They were highly skilled hunter-gatherers, adapting really well to a climate that was becoming warmer and drier, much like today's. They left behind different styles of stone tools and also some really intriguing rock art pictographs painted on cliff walls.
And those very distinctive split twig figurines.
Ah, yes. Those are fascinating. Small, stylized animal figures, usually deer or bighorn sheep, made from a single willow or cottonwood twig, split and folded back on itself. They've been found deep inside caves, often in caches. The thinking is they were likely used in hunting rituals or perhaps shamanistic practices, really unique to this region.
Okay, moving towards more settled life. The basket maker culture.
Right. Roughly 3,000 to about 1,300 years ago. As the name implies, they were master weavers. Baskets were essential technology for storage, carrying water, cooking with hot stones, even sandals. They started living in more permanent structures like pit houses, often dug partially into the ground and roofed with timber and mud, and used rock shelters extensively.
And this is when farming starts to become important.
Critically important, yes. They were among the first groups in the Southwest to really adopt agriculture growing corn, beans, and squash, introduced from Mesoamerica. This supplemented their hunting and gathering and allowed for larger, more settled communities.
Which leads up to the ancestral Pueblons.
Exactly. From about 1,300 to maybe 800 years ago. This represents a culmination of those earlier developments. They built more substantial, above-ground dwellings, multi-room stone pueblos, often clustered into villages. We find these ruins both along the rims and, quite remarkably, sometimes tucked away on ledges or flatter areas within the canyon itself.
So they were living right down in the canyon, too.
In some places, yes. They were sophisticated farmers, developing techniques like check dams and terracing, and they were also skilled potters, creating distinctive pottery styles.
Is there a place visitors can easily see these structures?
Yes, the Tusayan Pueblo and Museum, right near the Desert View entrance on the South Rim, preserves the ruins of a small ancestral Puebloan village dating back about 800 years. It gives you a really tangible connection.
And Mary Coulter's Desert View Watchtower was inspired by their architecture.
It was, yes. She specifically studied the design of ancient Puebloan towers in the region when designing the watchtower in the 1930s.
What happened to these communities? Why were the sites abandoned?
That's a complex question. Most of these larger sites in the canyon area seem to have been abandoned by around AD 1150 or 1200. It was likely a combination of factors: prolonged droughts impacting farming, depletion of resources like wood, maybe social changes or conflict. People didn't disappear, but they seem to have migrated and reorganized, perhaps joining larger communities elsewhere in the Southwest.
But the human story doesn't end there. The source makes a huge point that this land is still vital to many indigenous people today.
Absolutely crucial point. This isn't just ancient history. The Grand Canyon remains the ancestral homeland and a place of profound spiritual significance for 11 contemporary, federally recognized indigenous tribes. Their connection to this place is unbroken, stretching back millennia, and it's very much alive today.
11 tribes.
Yeah.
That's a significant number. We often hear about the Havasupai.
Yes, the Havasupai, the people of the blue-green waters. Their ancestral lands and current reservation are within Havasu Canyon, a side canyon famous for its stunning turquoise waterfalls. They traditionally farmed within the canyon.
And there was that significant name change recently.
Yes, a really important recent event. In November 2022, the popular hikers' campground and oasis along the Bright Angel Trail, formerly known as Indian Garden, was officially renamed Havasupai Gardens.
Why was that done?
It acknowledges the deep historical and ongoing connection of the Havasupai people to that specific area where they lived and farmed for generations before being forcibly removed by the National Park Service in the early 20th century. The last resident was made to leave in 1928. It also recognizes their long fight to regain some of their ancestral lands, which led to the expansion of their reservation in 1975.
That's a powerful act of recognition.
Yeah.
What about the Hopi tribe? Their origin stories are tied here.
The Hopi tribe, whose villages are east of the Grand Canyon, including Arabi, one of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements in the U.S., have creation stories that place their emergence into this world within the canyon. They speak of emerging from a sacred opening, a sipakuni, which some traditions locate near the confluence of the Little Colorado and Colorado rivers. They historically made pilgrimages into the canyon for resources like salt and sacred clay. And there's a strong artistic connection, too. The famous potter Nampeo drew inspiration from ancient pottery shards found near Hopi House on the South Rim, and artist Fred Caboti painted murals depicting Hopi life inside the Desert View Watchtower.
And the Hualapai tribe. They're associated with the western part and Grand Canyon West.
That's right. The Hualapai, the people of the Tall Pines, traditionally occupied the western stretches of the Grand Canyon. The Colorado River is integral to their creation stories and forms the boundary of their reservation. They view the river corridor as a sacred, living entity. And yes, it's important to understand that Grand Canyon West, including the famous Skywalk, is located on Hualapai tribal lands. It's owned and operated by the Hualapai tribe as a private enterprise, completely separate from the National Park Service area.
Got it. A separate entity. And the Navajo Nation borders the park to the east.
Yes, the Navajo Nation, the Diné, is the largest tribe in the U.S., and their lands border the eastern part of the park. Their oral histories are rich with references to the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River, often seen as a life-giving and protective boundary. Their ancestral lands are traditionally defined by 4 sacred mountains and associated rivers, with the Colorado being one. Some Dine also sought refuge within the canyon during the traumatic Long Walk period of forced removal in the mid-19th century, and of course the history of the Navajo Code Talkers in World War II is a vital part of their heritage.
And there are several Paiute tribes connected as well.
Yes, 5 groups are traditionally associated: the Kaiba Band of Paiute Indians, the Las Vegas Paiute Tribe, the Mawapa Band of Paiute Indians, the San Juan Southern Paiute Tribe, and the Paiute Indian Tribe of Utah. For the Southern Paiute people collectively, the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River are part of what they call Puxant Tuvip, their sacred creation landscape.
Specific connections.
The Kaiba Paiute have particularly deep ties to the North Rim area. They consider places like Deer Creek Falls down in the canyon a gateway to the spirit world. They remain actively involved in resource management discussions like those related to the Glen Canyon Dam's impacts. The San Juan Southern Paiute, whose traditional lands are between the San Juan and Colorado rivers, have also been gaining more recognition and contribute knowledge about the landscape.
What about the Pueblo of Zuni?
The Zuni people, or Aishiwi, whose pueblo is now in New Mexico, also trace their origins back to the Grand Canyon. Their traditions speak of their ancestors emerging from deep within the earth inside the canyon, possibly near Ribbon Falls or the Little Colorado River confluence. They see that confluence area as a spiritual umbilical cord connecting them to their place of origin.
So the whole environment is sacred.
For the Zuni, yes. The entire canyon environment, the plants, animals, water sources, geological features, holds deep spiritual meaning and is integral to their religious practices, particularly prayers for rainfall and community well-being.
And the Yavapai Apache Nation.
The Yavapai Apache Nation, based in the Verde Valley south of the canyon, also have historical ties. They traditionally traveled to the canyon rims to gather resources like pinyon nuts and medicinal plants. The Yavapai creation story is linked to a specific place, Spirit Mountain, further down the Colorado River. And one of their respected elders, Vincent Randall, narrated the park's interpretive film, We Are Grand Canyon, sharing Yavapai and Apache perspectives.
It's really striking how central the canyon and the river are to so many distinct cultures, not just historically, but now.
It truly is. And the Park Service is making more concerted efforts to recognize and honor these ongoing connections. A major initiative is the development of the Desert View Intertribal Cultural Heritage Site.
Where is that?
It's located at the Desert View area near the east entrance of the South Rim. It's a formal partnership between the National Park Service and all 11 associated tribes.
What's the goal?
The goal is really to transform that space into a platform for elevating Indigenous voices, providing cultural and economic opportunities for tribal members, like artisans sharing their crafts and stories through the expanded cultural demonstration program, and, crucially, educating visitors about the rich, continuous human history of the Grand Canyon from the perspective of the people whose ancestral homeland it is. There are plans for a tribal welcome center, too.
That sounds like a really positive shift toward sharing a more complete story.
It absolutely represents a welcome and necessary evolution in how the park interprets and shares its human history, moving towards greater inclusivity and partnership. The human story here is very much alive.
Okay, so from millennia of indigenous presence, we shift to the arrival of Europeans and Americans. A very different chapter, it sounds like, starting with some serious misunderstandings.
That's putting it mildly. The very first Europeans to see the canyon were Spanish soldiers led by Garcia Lopez de Cardenas in 1540. They were part of Coronado's larger expedition searching for the mythical cities of gold.
And they were guided by Hopi people.
Yes, but the Hopi guides seem to have been understandably wary. They apparently led the Spaniards to a particularly difficult section of the South Rim and didn't share crucial information about water sources or easier descent routes.
So the Spaniards were impressed, but baffled.
Completely. They were awestruck by the scale, but totally misjudged it. One account estimated the river at the bottom looked only 6 feet wide. They tried to descend, but were turned back by the cliffs and lack of water. Based on this difficult experience and perhaps the Hopi's discouraging descriptions, Coronado dismissed the whole region as basically an impenetrable wasteland.
And it stayed off the European map for centuries after that.
Pretty much. Because of that initial report, it remained effectively undiscovered by Europeans for another 235 years. There were a couple of Spanish priests like Garces who skirted the rims or visited with tribes like the Havasupai later in the 1770s, but no major exploration.
Then American interest picks up in the mid-19th century.
Yes, with figures like Lieutenant Joseph Christmas Ives, who led a U.S. Army expedition in 1857-58. He was tasked with exploring the potential for navigating the Colorado River by steamboat.
How did that go?
Not well. His steamboat, the Explorer, crashed on rocks downstream. He eventually reached the canyon overland near Diamond Creek. The reports and artwork from his expedition portrayed the canyon as this dark, terrifying, formidable place.
And he made a famously wrong prediction.
Infamously wrong. He concluded the region was altogether valueless and that his party would doubtless be the last party of whites to visit this profitless locality. He completely failed to grasp its scenic beauty or scientific importance.
Wow. Talk about getting it wrong. Then comes the figure most associated with exploring the canyon.
Major John Wesley Powell, a one-armed Civil War veteran, geologist, and ethnographer. He was deeply intrigued by what maps labeled the great unknown regions of the Colorado River.
His first expedition in 1869 sounds legendary and incredibly dangerous.
It was unbelievably arduous. They set off with 4 wooden boats and 9 men to navigate the Green and Colorado rivers, including the Grand Canyon. They faced treacherous rapids, lost boats and vital supplies, endured near starvation. Once inside the Grand Canyon, Powell described it as our granite prison. Several men actually abandoned the expedition near the end, fearing they wouldn't survive. Tragically, they were killed after hiking out, but Powell and the remaining crew successfully navigated the entire canyon.
And that captured the public's imagination.
It really did. His second expedition in 1871-72 was better funded and equipped, focused more on scientific surveying. Powell was a keen observer. He named many features, like the Granite Gorge, and significantly, he was the first scientist to really describe and understand the geological significance of the Great Unconformity. He completely debunked Ives' assessment and became a major force in American science, eventually heading the U.S. Geological Survey and advocating for science-based land management in the West.
But again, important to remember, this exploration was happening in lands intimately known to indigenous peoples for thousands of years.
Absolutely critical context. Powell's expeditions marked a new era of American interest in scientific inquiry, but they were entering a landscape with a deep, pre-existing human history.
Following Powell, interest grew settlers, miners.
Yes, the late 19th century saw increasing activity. Prospectors searched, often fruitlessly, for minerals. Entrepreneurs began to see the potential for tourism, especially once transportation improved.
Which led to the first steps towards protection.
Right. Some people started advocating for preserving the canyon. The first federal action was President Benjamin Harrison designating the area as the Grand Canyon Forest Reserve in 1893.
But the real champion was Theodore Roosevelt.
Theodore Roosevelt was hugely influential. He visited in 1903 and was profoundly moved. He became a powerful advocate for its preservation. Using the relatively new Antiquities Act, he declared Grand Canyon a national monument in 1908.
And delivered that famous quote.
The one about, "Leave it as it is, man can only mar it." Yes. It perfectly captured his vision for protecting its unique character from inappropriate development. Keep it for your children, your children's children, and all who come after you as the one great site which every American should see.
Access really changed things though, right? The railroad.
Dramatically. The Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway completed a spur line directly to the South Rim Village in 1901. That made it much, much easier for tourists to reach the canyon.
And led to building hotels and services.
Exactly. Sophisticated services followed quickly. The Grand El Tovar Hotel opened in 1905, offering luxury accommodations right on the rim. And the architect Mary Coulter designed several other iconic buildings in that early period: Hopi House, Lookout Studio, Hermit's Rest, creating a distinctive, rustic architectural style for the park.
And then finally, full national park status.
Yes, after years of debate and various proposals, President Woodrow Wilson signed the act officially establishing Grand Canyon National Park on February 26, 1919.
With that core mission.
To conserve the scenery and the natural and historic objects and the wildlife therein, and to provide for the enjoyment of the same in such manner and by such means as will leave them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. That's the fundamental mandate.
And its global importance was recognized later with UNESCO status.
World Heritage Site status in 1979, acknowledging its exceptional natural beauty, geological significance, and importance as a habitat.
So, since becoming a park in 1919, its history hasn't stood still. The source mentions several significant events and evolving challenges. Air tourism, for instance.
Right. Scenic flights over the canyon actually started very early, back in the 1920s. But a major turning point was the tragic mid-air collision of two passenger airliners over the canyon in 1956.
That was a huge disaster.
Killed all 128 people aboard both planes. It was a major national event that happened over the park, and it served as a huge catalyst for modernizing air traffic control and led directly to the creation of the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. So a park event had massive national consequences.
And concerns about noise continue.
Yes. The noise from sightseeing aircraft impacting the natural quiet and visitor experience on the ground has been a long-standing issue. Another fatal tour aircraft collision in 1986 led to Congress passing the National Parks Overflights Act in 1987, mandating studies and the establishment of flight-free zones. Regulations continue to evolve, aiming to manage the number of tours, encourage quieter aircraft technology, and restore natural quiet over large parts of the park. It remains a complex and sometimes contentious issue.
We already touched on the Glen Canyon Dam's impact on the river within the park.
Yes, completed in 1963 upstream, its effects have been profound and ongoing, trapping sediment, regulating flows, releasing cold, clear water. It fundamentally altered the river's physical processes and ecology through the Grand Canyon.
Have there been efforts to mitigate that?
There have. The park and other agencies have conducted several experimental controlled floods, high flow releases from the dam starting in 1996, designed to mimic some effects of natural floods, like rebuilding sandbars and beaches used for camping and habitat. It's part of a long-term adaptive management program trying to balance the dam's operations with downstream environmental needs.
Fire management policy has also changed significantly over time.
It really has. For decades, the policy across the West was aggressive suppression of all fires. But that led to unnatural buildups of fuel in the forests on the rims.
Which could lead to bigger, more severe fires when they did start.
Exactly. Starting in the late 60s and 70s, ecological understanding grew, recognizing that fire is actually a natural and necessary process in these ecosystems. So the park gradually shifted its policy. Since 1978, they've had a plan that allows some lightning-caused fires to burn under specific monitored conditions. And they also use prescribed burns intentionally set fires to reduce hazardous fuels and restore more natural forest structures. It's complex management, though, as shown by incidents like the 2000 outlet fire, which escaped prescribed boundaries.
And importantly, that growing effort to acknowledge and incorporate indigenous heritage like renaming Havasupai Gardens and the Desert View Initiative, that seems like a significant evolution in the park's more recent history.
It is. It signals a really important shift towards telling a more complete, accurate, and respectful human story of the Grand Canyon, recognizing the deep and enduring connections of the associated tribes and working more collaboratively with them. The human story here is constantly unfolding, a dynamic interplay between natural forces, diverse cultures, exploration, preservation efforts, and our evolving understanding.
Okay, so shifting gears to experiencing this immense place today, the source outlines a huge range of possibilities, from just gazing from the rim to some pretty serious adventures.
Absolutely. And the key takeaway for anyone visiting is that planning is essential. For safety, for making the most of your time, you really need to plan ahead.
And a fundamental choice is which rim to visit, right? They sound very different.
Very different experiences. The South Rim is by far the most popular and accessible. It gets about 90% of the park's visitation.
Why it's so popular?
It's easier to get to, has the most extensive infrastructure, lodges, restaurants, visitor centers, shops, and it's open year-round. It sits at about 7,000 feet elevation, which is still high, but a bit lower than the North Rim.
But that popularity means crowds.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Especially during the peak season, which runs roughly from March through October. You have to contend with significant traffic congestion and limited parking at viewpoints and trailheads.
So using the shuttle is key.
The free park shuttle bus system is absolutely essential on the South Rim during busy times. It's mandatory for accessing areas like the Hermit Road viewpoints for most of the year, and highly recommended for getting around the village area and to trailheads like South Kaibab.
When's the best time to visit the South Rim if you want fewer crowds?
November through February is the least crowded. You get a totally different, quieter feel. But you need to be prepared for winter conditions, cold temperatures, possibility of snow and ice on trails and roads. Spring and fall offer milder weather and are often considered ideal, but still busy.
Okay, what about the North Rim?
The North Rim is a whole different world. Much more remote, receives only about 10% of the park's visitors. It feels wilder, more secluded, nestled in dense pine and fir forests.
And it's higher.
Yes, significantly higher, averaging over 8,000 feet. This means it's cooler, which can be nice in summer, but it also gets heavy snowfall.
Which dictates its season.
Exactly. Full visitor services on the North Rim, the lodge, campground, restaurants are typically only open from May 15th through October 15th. The main road into the North Rim, Highway 67, closes completely to vehicles from December 1st until May 14th due to snow.
And getting between the rims is a long haul.
It's a major drive, about 220 miles, takes 4.5 to 5 hours. Because there's no bridge across the canyon within the park, you have to drive all the way around.
So the North Rim is more for people seeking solitude, a different perspective.
Yeah, solitude, a quieter, more relaxed pace, cooler temperatures, different forest environment, and different viewpoints looking south across the canyon. But you have to plan around that limited season and its remoteness.
And we need to reiterate that Grand Canyon West, with the Skywalk, is completely separate.
Yes, crucial distinction. Grand Canyon West is not part of Grand Canyon National Park. It's on Hualapai tribal land, owned and operated by the Hualapai tribe. It requires a separate entrance fee, is accessed primarily from the Las Vegas-Kingman direction, and offers different attractions like the Glass Skywalk. It's a distinct Hualapai tourism enterprise.
Got it. Okay, so once you're in the national park, either rim, what are some must-see viewpoints?
Each viewpoint really does offer a unique perspective because the canyon is constantly changing shape. On the South Rim, driving east along Desert View Drive...
You could drive your own car there.
Yes, private vehicles are allowed on Desert View Drive year-round. Key stops include Pipe Creek Vista, often your first good look if coming from the south. Grand View Point offers these really wide, sweeping panoramas. Moran Point is great for seeing the different major rock groups Powell identified. Near there is the Tusayan Pueblo site we mentioned for that historical context, and definitely the Desert View Watchtower at the far east end.
The Mary Coulter Building.
Yes. Designed in 1932, inspired by ancestral Puebloan towers. It has amazing architecture, Hopi murals inside, incredible views from the top, and it's now the main hub for the Intertribal Cultural Heritage Site activities.
Okay. And then along Hermit Road on the west side of the village, which is mostly shuttle access.
Right, shuttle bus or hiking, biking access for most of the year. That road has iconic stops like Powell Point, which has a memorial. Hopi Point is legendary for sunset views. Mojave and Pima Points offer great views down towards the river. You can sometimes even hear the rapids from Pima Point. And the road ends at Hermit's Rest, another historic Coulter building.
What about signature viewpoints on the North Rim?
Bright Angel Point is the classic view right near the Grand Canyon Lodge. It's an easy paved walk, though the source notes the paved trail itself is closed for repairs during the 2025 season.
Ah, good to know. Important update.
Very. Point Imperial is another must-see. At 8,803 feet, it's the highest viewpoint on either rim accessible by paved road. You get these vast views looking east over the Painted Desert and the Marble Canyon section. And Cape Royal, at the very end of the scenic drive, offers maybe the grandest panorama on the North Rim looking south and west. You can see the Angel's Window arch formation there and even spot the Desert View Watchtower across the canyon on a clear day.
It sounds like just seeing the views could take days. But the trails, that's where you really get into the canyon. But the source stresses safety repeatedly.
Immensely. Hiking in the Grand Canyon is an incredible experience, but it demands serious respect and preparation. The park is something like 35 miles of paved trails, mostly on the rims, but over 560 miles of unpaved trails, many descending steeply into the canyon.
What are the absolute must-know safety points?
Number 1. Check conditions before you go. Weather forecast, trail status, water availability, the park website, or visitor centers are essential. 2. Hydration. Carry plenty of water, more than you think you need, and also salty snacks or electrolyte replacements. Water sources below the rim are scarce and sometimes unreliable.
Especially crucial in the heat.
Absolutely. 3. Heat and elevation. The inner canyon can exceed 100 degrees F, 38 degrees C in summer. Avoid hiking during the hottest part of the day, usually 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Remember, the rims are at high altitude, 7,000, 8,000 plus feet, which can affect anyone, especially if coming from sea level. Take it easy initially.
And the big one.
4. The cardinal rule. Do not attempt to hike from the rim to the river and back in one day. I can't stress this enough. It looks tempting on a map, but the extreme elevation change, a vertical mile each way, the heat and the exertion make it incredibly dangerous and a leading cause of rescues and fatalities.
Okay, rim to river and back in a day. No.
Okay.
Got it. What else?
Appropriate gear is vital. Sturdy hiking shoes with good tread, layers of clothing, temperatures vary hugely, wide-brimmed hat, sunglasses, sunscreen. And finally, tell someone your plans, where you're hiking, and when you expect to be back.
That rim to river warning is so stark Because it seems like people underestimate it constantly.
They do. It's easy to hike down, gravity helps. But climbing back out that vertical mile, often in intense heat, is brutally difficult. Even experienced hikers get into trouble attempting it in one day. Hike smart. Know your limits. Turn around before you feel tired. The uphill will take twice as long.
Okay, so bearing those warnings firmly in mind, what are some trail examples? Maybe starting easy on the South Rim.
For an easy introduction, the rim trail is mostly paved, relatively flat, running along the edge of the canyon near the village. You can walk as much or as little as you like, and parts are wheelchair accessible.
What about dipping just below the rim?
A popular short hike is the South Kaibab Trail down to a point. It's about 1.8 miles round trip, descends maybe 600 feet, gives you that first taste of being in the canyon. But remember that 600 feet descent means a steep 600 feet climb back up. No water, little shade.
Okay, moderate options.
Continuing down the South Kaibab Trail to Cedar Ridge is about 3 miles round trip, 1,150 feet down. Great views, restrooms, but still no water or reliable shade. Alternatively, the Bright Angel Trail offers more shade potential and has seasonal water available at rest houses. Hiking to the 1.5-mile West House is 3 miles round trip, 1,100 feet down. Going to the 3-mile Rest House is 6 miles round trip, about 2,100 feet down. These are still strenuous climbs back out.
And for more experienced, prepared hikers wanting longer day hikes.
Sticking with the South Rim, South Kaibab to Skeleton Point is a tough 6-mile round trip over 2,000 feet down, offering the first really good views of the Colorado River from that trail. Bright Angel Trail down to Havasupai Gardens, formerly Indian Garden, is a significant undertaking 9 miles round trip over 3,000 feet elevation change. It reaches a beautiful, lush cottonwood oasis with perennial water, a stark contrast to the surrounding desert. That's a very challenging day hike.
What about trails in the North Rim? Easier options there.
For easy walks, besides the Bright Angel Point Trail, remember, paved part closed in 2025, the Cape Royal Trail is paved, only 0.6 miles round trip to viewpoints. The Transept Trail connects the lodge and campground along the rim, about 3 miles round trip.
Moderate on the North Rim.
The Cape Final Trail is a good moderate option. It's about 4 miles round trip, mostly level through the forest, leading to a quiet, secluded overlook. Great for sunrise or sunset.
And strenuous from the North Rim.
The only maintained trail descending into the canyon from the North Rim is the North Kaibab Trail. It's extremely strenuous. Even hiking just a portion, like down to the Supai Tunnel, about 4 miles round trip, 1,400 feet elevation change, is a significant effort, especially the climb back up. Going further requires serious planning and fitness.
And that North Kaibab Trail is part of the legendary rim-to-rim hike.
It is. The rim-to-rim hike is the ultimate Grand Canyon backpacking challenge for most people. Typically, it involves hiking down the North Kaibab Trail, about 14.3 miles, 6,000 feet down, to Phantom Ranch at the bottom, then up the Bright Angel Trail, about 9.6 miles, 4,500 feet up, to the South Rim, or vice versa.
That sounds intense, not a day hike.
Absolutely not. It's usually done over 2 or 3 days, requires permits for camping or highly sought-after reservations at Phantom Ranch, obtained via lottery, and demands excellent physical condition, meticulous planning, proper gear, and awareness of conditions. It's an incredible achievement, but not to be undertaken lightly.
It really hammers home how the topography and climate dictate everything here. Those elevation changes are huge.
Huge. Hike smart, be prepared, respect the environment. That's the mantra.
Beyond hiking, the source mentions mule rides as another unique way to see the canyon.
Yes, mule rides are a historic and very distinctive Grand Canyon experience. They're offered on both rims, though the options differ.
What's available on the South Rim?
Xanterra operates the South Rim Mules. They offer a 3-hour Canyon Vistas ride that travels along the rim trail. It doesn't actually descend into the canyon, costs around $185 according to the source. They used to offer overnight rides down the Bright Angel Trail to stay at Phantom Ranch.
Used to.
Yes, and this is critical. The source states that overnight South Rim mule rides to Phantom Ranch are canceled through at least December 31st, 2025. This is due to the ongoing construction work on the Transcanyon Waterline affecting the Bright Angel Trail.
Okay, that's a major update for anyone dreaming of that trip. No overnight mule rides to Phantom Ranch until 2026 at the earliest.
Correct. And even for the rim rides, there are very strict rider qualifications. Age limits, height requirements, and a crucial weight limit. Usually around 225 pounds fully dressed, but check current rules. Riders also need to be in good physical condition and understand English instructions for safety. They are serious about these rules.
What about the North Rim mule rides?
Canyon Rides operates the North Rim Mules. These are seasonal, typically May 15th to October 15th. They offer shorter rides, like 1 hour or half-day trips along rim trails, or descending partway down the North Kaibab Trail, but they do not go all the way to the river. They also have similar rider restrictions regarding weight, age, and physical condition. Reservations are essential for all mule rides, often far in advance.
This definitely requires planning and meeting specific criteria.
Absolutely. It's a unique experience, but subject to conditions and requires booking ahead and ensuring you meet the qualifications.
Another way to engage more deeply is through the ranger programs, right? The source highlights these.
Yes, highly recommended. The park offers a wide variety of free ranger programs on both rims. They cover geology, ecology, human history, stargazing. It's a fantastic way to enhance your understanding and appreciation.
Examples.
On the South Rim, there might be a fossil walk pointing out marine fossils near the Bright Angel Trailhead, guided rim walks discussing nature and culture along the paved trail, geology talks at the Yavapai Geology Museum. Since Grand Canyon is an international dark sky park, the night sky and astronomy programs are incredible, especially during the annual Star Party, usually held in June.
And the cultural programs.
The cultural demonstrations at the Desert View Intertribal Cultural Heritage Site are really special. Artisans from the 11 associated tribes show their crafts, like pottery, weaving, silversmithing, and talk about their cultural connections to the canyon. There are often evening programs in the auditoriums, too. The North Rim also offers similar programs during its season.
And the Junior Ranger program for kids.
Always popular, it's a great way for families to learn together. These programs really add value, helping you move beyond just passive sightseeing to actively engage with the place, understand its complexities, and appreciate why preserving it is so important.
We've covered the main areas, but the source mentions venturing beyond the beaten path. For people seeking quieter, maybe more intimate experiences, what does that look like?
It usually involves a bit more effort, or perhaps going to less accessible areas or timing your visit carefully. Secrets in a park visited by millions often just mean places that require walking a bit further, having the right vehicle, or knowing where to look away from the main hubs.
So examples on the South Rim, away from the main village bustle.
Shoshone Point is a great one mentioned. It's on an unmarked dirt road, requires about a mile walk from the gate, and opens onto this beautiful, quiet promontory overlooking the canyon. Feels very secluded, great for sunset, often missed by most visitors.
Trails, too.
The Grandview Trail is much more rugged and less maintained than Bright Angel or South Kaibab. It's an old miner's trail, steep and challenging, but offers solitude and a sense of history. Even just accessing Yaqui Point via the shuttle bus often means slightly fewer crowds than viewpoints you can drive to, especially for sunrise.
The North Rim is inherently quieter, but are there spots there that feel particularly off the beaten path?
We mentioned the Cape Final Trail already. That 4-mile round-trip hike through the forest leads to a very peaceful overlook that sees far fewer people than Bright Angel Point or Cape Royal. And then there's the ultimate remote viewpoint, Toroweep, also known as Tuweep.
That sounds intense.
It is. It's in a very remote western section of the park, accessed by miles of rough, unpaved roads. You absolutely need a high-clearance, four-wheel drive vehicle, and you must be completely self-sufficient. Bring all your own water, food, tire repair gear. Requires permits for day use or camping, but the reward. A dramatic, sheer 3,000-foot drop straight down to the Colorado River. It's breathtakingly wild and raw, an adventure for the truly prepared.
Wow. What about down in the canyon? Hidden oases.
There are incredible spots, but many are hard to reach for the average visitor. Places like Elves Chasm or Deer Creek Falls with stunning waterfalls and grottos are usually accessed as side hikes during multi-day river trips down the Colorado, so not accessible from the rim trails easily.
Okay.
Havasupai Gardens, while on a main trail, feels like an oasis, that lush green fed by springs 4.5 miles below the rim. Such a contrast. For backpackers seeking solitude, the Tonto Trail contours for about 70 miles along the Tonto Platform, the bench above the inner gorge. It connects the Bright Angel and South Kaibab trails, but sees far less traffic. And the confluence, where the turquoise Little Colorado River meets the main Colorado, is visually stunning and culturally sacred, but again, best seen from the river or very long, difficult hikes.
And Phantom Ranch, even though it's well known, feels like a secret just because getting there requires so much effort and luck with reservations.
Exactly. It's the only lodging at the bottom of the canyon. You have to hike or, when available, ride a mule down. Reservations are via a lottery system booked many months, even over a year in advance. Just reaching Phantom Ranch offers this profound sense of immersion, tranquility, and accomplishment that feels very special and removed from the rim crowds.
So finding these quieter spots often boils down to accessibility, putting in the physical effort, having the right gear or vehicle, planning meticulously for permits or lotteries.
Precisely. Or simply timing. Visiting the North Rim instead of the South, hiking early in the morning or late in the afternoon, coming during the off-season, winter on the South Rim. And crucially, whenever you venture off the main paved paths, especially into the backcountry, practice. Leave no trace ethics, meticulously pack out everything you pack in, stay on durable surfaces, respect wildlife, leave artifacts where you find them, and always prioritize safety. Let someone know your detailed plans, carry navigation tools, be prepared for emergencies.
This incredible place, it's not just a static museum piece. The source details a lot of ongoing challenges and active conservation work. It's a living park facing real pressures.
It absolutely is. It's a global treasure, yes, but it's under significant pressure from various modern stresses. And it's also a crucial biodiversity hotspot. The range of elevations and microclimates supports a remarkable array of life. The source mentions figures like nearly 1,750 plant species, over 450 bird species, numerous mammals, reptiles, amphibians, adapted to these extreme conditions.
And protecting endangered species is a major focus of the conservation work.
A cornerstone. The California Condor Recovery Program is perhaps the most famous example. These massive birds were on the very brink of extinction. Grand Canyon and the surrounding Arizona Strip became a key reintroduction site.
And it's been a success.
A qualified success, yes. Captive breeding programs and careful releases have brought the total population back from just 22 individuals in the 1980s to over 560 by 2022, with more now living in the wild than in captivity. It's a remarkable comeback.
But there are still challenges.
Major challenges. The #1 cause of death for wild condors is still lead poisoning, primarily from ingesting lead bullet fragments when scavenging carcasses left by hunters. That's a huge issue requiring outreach and voluntary shifts to non-lead ammunition. More recently, highly pathogenic avian influenza, HPAI, hit the flock in 2023, causing significant mortality and prompting emergency vaccination efforts. Habitat issues and risks like power lines also remain concerns.
What about native fish, like the humpback chub, affected by the dam?
Yes, the humpback chub is a fascinating native fish perfectly adapted to the wild, warm, muddy Colorado River of the past. It was listed as endangered for decades. But due to intensive conservation efforts, its status was actually downlisted to threatened in October 2021, which is a positive sign.
Where are they found?
The largest remaining population anywhere is right here in Grand Canyon National Park, especially near the confluence with the Little Colorado River, which provides warmer water temperatures they need for spawning.
But the dam still poses a threat.
Yes, the cold, clear water released from Glen Canyon Dam, the altered flows, and the lack of sediment all favor non-native species, especially rainbow and brown trout, which prey on young chub and compete with them for food. So conservation involves things like moving young chub to other tributaries, like Havasu Creek, where they've established new spawning populations that's been particularly successful, and also, unfortunately, removing non-native fish in critical chub habitat.
Are there other species mentioned?
The source briefly mentions others, like the Kanab amber snail, found only in a few specific springs, like Vassi's paradise, the century milk vetch, a rare plant clinging to cliffs, and the unique kaibab swallowtail butterfly found mainly on the North Rim.
And managing non-native animals, like the bison on the North Rim.
Right. There's a herd of bison, descended from animals introduced long ago, that primarily roams the North Rim forests. Because they aren't native to this specific area and their numbers grew, they were having impacts on water sources, vegetation, and archaeological sites. The park, in collaboration with tribes and state agencies, is actively managing the herd to reduce its size within the park boundaries, aiming for fewer than 200 animals. This involves live capture and translocating bison to tribal lands.
Habitat restoration is also ongoing.
Yes, removing invasive plants like tamarisk, salt cedar that crowd out native vegetation along the river, reestablishing native plants, monitoring ecosystem health, and studying things like groundwater flow, using dye tracing to better understand and protect vital spring ecosystems. Groups like the Grand Canyon Conservancy play a big role in funding and supporting this work.
And then there's the massive infrastructure project happening right now that's affecting trails, the water pipeline.
The Trans-Canyon Waterline Replacement. Yes, this is probably the single most significant and complex infrastructure project the park has undertaken in decades.
Why is it needed?
The existing pipeline, built way back in the 1960s, is the only source of potable water for the entire South Rim. all the hotels, residents, visitors, and the inner canyon facilities like Phantom Ranch and Havasupai Gardens. It runs from a spring on the north rim, across the canyon, and up to the south rim. It's way past its expected lifespan and suffers frequent costly breaks, causing major water shortages and service disruptions, like happened again just in August 2024.
So it has to be replaced.
It's absolutely critical. It's a multi-year, hugely expensive project, over $200 million, involving replacing miles of buried pipeline in incredibly difficult remote terrain, upgrading water treatment plants, and building new storage tanks. It's projected to be completed sometime in 2027.
And this is why trails are closed.
Exactly. For worker safety and logistics, significant phased closures of popular trails and campgrounds in the Inner Canyon corridor are unavoidable. As we noted, the source confirms that as of mid-2025, while the Bright Angel Trail and campground have reopened after earlier closures, sections of the River Trail east of Bright Angel, the Silver Bridge across the Colorado, and the Plateau Point Trail remain closed, likely until around October 1st, 2025, for the final critical phases of construction near the river. Visitors absolutely need to check the park's website for the latest closure information before planning any Inner Canyon hikes.
That's a huge undertaking, but clearly essential for the park's basic operation. Looking longer term, climate change is obviously a major concern mentioned in the source.
It is. A 2024 park report highlights the trends and expected impacts for the Grand Canyon region. Generally hotter temperatures, changes in precipitation patterns likely leading to more severe droughts, but also potentially more intense flash floods, shifts in vegetation communities, and increased risk of large wildfires.
And water supplies are particularly vulnerable.
Extremely vulnerable. Both the Colorado River itself, due to regional drought, and the local springs that feed tributaries and provide water for the park infrastructure and wildlife. The park is actively working on climate adaptation strategies, using climate projections and planning, focusing heavily on water conservation, fixing leaks like the TCWL project, improving water storage, and even researching potential alternative water sources. Federal funds are helping support vulnerability assessments, and they're also part of the larger NPS Green Parks Plan, working on mitigation, reducing the park's own greenhouse gas emissions through energy efficiency, renewables, sustainable transportation.
And the perennial challenge, managing all those visitors, balancing preservation and enjoyment.
That's the core ongoing challenge for any popular national park, especially one like Grand Canyon. It's a constant balancing act, guided by various management plans. Key strategies include the free shuttle system on the South Rim to reduce vehicle congestion, but with high visitation, things like lodging, developed campgrounds, and especially backcountry permits require robust reservation systems.
So planning way ahead is crucial for those.
Essential. Lodging often books up 12-15 months in advance. Campgrounds typically open for reservations 6 months ahead and fill quickly. Phantom Ranch lottery is 15 months out. Backcountry permits for corridor campgrounds or remote areas also use a lottery system about 4 months in advance. Getting timely information out via the park website and the NPS app is vital to help people plan safe and responsible trips. Collaboration with gateway communities, businesses, and partner organizations is also key.
The source also mentions some recent developments, like fee adjustments.
Yes, it notes camping fees increased in May 2025. A proposed increase for commercial river trip fees was under review in late 2024, expected to take effect in March 2025. These adjustments help fund operations and maintenance.
And the new national monuments surrounding the park.
Right. The Bajnavjo Ita Kukveni ancestral footprints of the Grand Canyon National Monument, designated in August 2023. This protects nearly 1 million acres of federal lands adjacent to the park, primarily to safeguard sites culturally significant to the regional tribes. While it's separate from the park itself, it represents a major step in honoring indigenous connections to the wider landscape and emphasizes tribal co-stewardship, which is a really positive and growing trend.
It paints a picture of very dynamic management, juggling massive construction projects, dealing with environmental challenges like drought and condor health, managing intense visitation, and building stronger partnerships with the tribes whose ancestral home this is.
Exactly. It requires holistic, forward-thinking management to balance all these complex operational needs, visitor safety, resource protection, and cultural heritage preservation for the long term.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all this. For someone listening who's now thinking about planning their own Grand Canyon adventure, what are the absolute essential tips to remember from everything we've discussed?
All right, key takeaways for planning. First, best times to visit. South Rim is year-round, but spring and fall generally offer the best weather, though still busy. Summer is peak season, very crowded and hot in the Inner Canyon. Winter is least crowded but potentially cold and snowy. North Rim season is short.
Mm-hmm.
May 15th to October 15th typically. Hiking below the rim is generally best in spring and fall due to temperatures.
Second, reservations.
Crucial, book way ahead. Lodging, 12, 15 plus months out. Developed campgrounds, 6 months out, opens on a rolling basis. Phantom Ranch Lottery, 15 months out. Remember, South Rim overnight mule trips are canceled through 2025. Backcountry permits require applying via lottery about 4 months before your desired start date. Don't expect to show up and find a place to stay or camp, especially in peak season.
Third, getting around.
On the South Rim, use the free shuttle bus. Seriously. Especially March through October. Parking is extremely limited at popular spots. The shuttles cover the Village, Hermit Road, and the Yaqui Point South Kaibab trailhead area. On the North Rim, you'll generally need your own vehicle to reach viewpoints like Point Imperial and Cape Royal. And remember, driving between the rims takes 4.5 to 5 hours.
Fourth, and worth repeating, safety.
Cannot emphasize this enough. Safety first, always. Hydration, 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 plus electrolyte healthy snacks. Recognize and respect the extreme heat, especially below the rims in summer. Absolutely NO hiking rim to river and back in one day. Be aware of altitude effects, wear proper gear, shoes, layers, sun protection. Tell someone your detailed hiking plans. Keep a safe distance from wildlife. Don't feed the squirrels. Beware of lightning danger during monsoon season, usually summer. Check trail conditions, especially for ice in winter on upper trails. Stay on marked trails. Practice leave no trace.
And fifth, making the most of your visit.
Plan ahead. Use the official NPS website, nts.gov.gr.ca. It's your best source for current alerts, closures, conditions, program schedules. Download the NPS app. Stop by the visitor centers. Consider attending ranger programs to deepen your understanding. Try to catch a sunrise or sunset. They're magical. If time allows, consider visiting both rims for contrasting experiences. Check accessibility information if needed.
Okay, that's a great summary of practical advice.
It's a place that rewards preparation.
So wrapping this whole deep dive up, what are the big picture takeaways? It feels like the Grand Canyon operates on these multiple immense scales simultaneously.
That's a perfect way to put it. You have the scale of deep geological time, nearly 2 billion years of Earth history recorded in the rocks, the drama of the Great Unconformity, the relatively recent power of the Colorado River carving through it all.
Then the scale of human history.
Right. Thousands of years of indigenous presence, adaptation, and spiritual connection, embodied today by the 11 associated tribes whose ties remain vibrant. Layered onto that are the stories of European and American exploration, scientific discovery, and the crucial movement to preserve it as a national park and World Heritage Site.
And the scale of the visitor experience today.
Exactly. The sheer physical scale offers everything from easily accessible overlooks that stagger you with their beauty to incredibly demanding backcountry journeys requiring serious commitment.
And finally, the scale of the challenges it faces now.
Yes, the ongoing work of stewarding this global treasure, protecting its unique biodiversity from threats like climate change and invasive species, maintaining and replacing critical, aging infrastructure like the water pipeline, adapting to a changing climate, managing millions of visitors sustainably, and, importantly, continuing to build respectful partnerships with the tribes.
It's a place that inspires awe, demands respect, and requires constant evolving stewardship.
Its grandeur is enduring, absolutely. But its future, especially in the face of modern pressures, is being actively shaped right now by conservation efforts, infrastructure investments, management decisions, and those crucial partnerships. The story isn't finished. It's very much being written today.
It really does make you pause and think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You stand there looking at this landscape shaped by immense, almost unimaginable slowness, geological forces over millions, billions of years.
Right.
And yet, the choices and actions we take today, how we visit, the conservation policies we support, how we address climate change, how we engage with and honor the ancestral connections of the tribes, those are shaping its future on a much, much shorter human timescale.
That juxtaposition between deep time and our immediate impact is incredibly powerful.
What responsibility does that realization place on us then? As visitors, as citizens, as stewards, however temporary, of this incredible place, it's definitely something to reflect on long after you've left the rim.
A profound question indeed. One that resonates deeply when you contemplate the Grand Canyon.
Well, this has been our deep dive into Grand Canyon National Park, drawing from the rich material you shared with us. We really hope it's given you some valuable context, insights, and maybe sparked further curiosity about this truly remarkable place.
Thank you so much for joining us for this exploration.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning.